Welcome back to my gathering basket. Happy 2019. My name is Danelle, and this is my first podcast for 2019. I don't know about you, but it seems like this year is already flying. A little bit like 2018 did. But there's been a lot of time for crafting the last couple weeks for me. I was able to, if you watched my last podcast, you know that I was right on the edge of being able to clean off all my needles and hooks for the year and get all of my projects done. And I can say I did it. I was so excited. It was very late, I believe, on New Year's Eve day that I got the last project cast off. So I've never done that before. I wasn't really sure that I could. Never had any intention of really doing that. It wasn't like I had a whipped down project list or anything like that. I just happened to find some very old projects that I had totally forgotten about, pulled them out of the closet and decided, let's give them a try. So if you saw my last podcast, welcome back. If this is your first time visiting with me, my name is Danelle and I live in Southwest Missouri, where it is currently cold and definitely time for wearing knitwear. So this was one project I had made out of some alpaca blend. I forgot, I believe it was a CVM alpaca. No, Targhee alpaca, I'm sorry. That I showed last time, and I had, I believe, one finished and the other one I had like half done. I think I still had just half of a sock. I have a pair and these things are so warm and squishy. They are going to be wonderful. I was trying really hard to keep them nice. Tomorrow they will probably be on my feet. So I got that done. This is the My Cup of Tea pattern. You can see the pattern there a little bit. It's a very subtle pattern, but very pretty. Very easy to do. Got that pair completed. And then I had a little pair of just some anklets, just testing out a different type of sock yarn. And they are both done. Both of these projects, I know were from 2016. So very glad to have those project bags emptied out, those needles ready for new projects, and two different yarns that I've tested out. I am not sure if either one is available at this point. That's why I'm not going into a lot of details. But very old yarn, very old projects, and they are done. So that meant I got to cast on some new things. And one thing, I do have chickens and I have gardens and things that necessitate me going outside in some cold weather that we are finally getting. So I needed a new cowl. And I showed you last week the cowl that I had done, or last time, one cowl that I had finished. And I decided that was so much fun and it felt so good, but I really, really liked the yarn and I did not want to use that as my run out and clean out chicken coops and stuff like that. So I wanted something that was that I didn't really care if it got thrown in the wash every other day. So I pulled out my trusty Kroy yarn, Patons Kroy, and made a second sock head cowl. This is just the basic sock head cowl that's been done by, it seems like, everybody. Really fast, really fun knit. It's already been through the washer. I will probably pop it on tonight when I go out to feed my chickens. It's going to be nice and warm. The fun part with this was the stripiest, almost a micro stripe. So this is the right or public side. And then as I was weaving in ends and turned the thing inside out, I almost like that as much or better. That's the reverse stockinette, and just somehow the way that purl stitch, I just really liked the way the colors blended. So there you go. I've got like a 2-in-1 cowl. So this was so much fun to keep, and that was one skein, these are 50-gram balls, and one skein got me, I think, all the way to here. And then I had a partial skein left over from another project. So I just skeined that up, and it was my original intention. I had 2 balls because I planned to make a pair of socks. And so my original intention was start here, and instead of measuring or weighing out what I had started with, the pattern suggests, and this is a free pattern by Kelly McClure called Sockhead Cowl. It suggests to do about 3 to 4 inches of ribbing and then weigh this so that you can duplicate or leave the correct amount of yarn at the end to have a matching rib section. So my plan, having 50-gram balls, was just to start here and knit until I ran out of yarn, start the second ball, and then do the same. But it was looking like when I tried it on, it looked like it was going to be almost plenty long with just the one. And having that extra, I don't know, 20% or so left of another ball, really, I didn't need this to be much bigger. And it will definitely go over my nose and keep this area of my neck that my chore coat doesn't cover. So this should keep me plenty warm. And I'm really kind of thinking I may just cast on another one. This was a fantastic, especially having the 50-gram balls. It was a fantastic little project to keep in my purse and just tote around mindless. If I went 2 or 3 rows beyond and the ribbing didn't match, no big deal. So fun project, extremely useful, very warm. I am going to get a lot of wear. And if I have 2 or 3, then I literally can have one in the wash and another one to wear. So those were my knitting projects, started and completed since I last spoke with you. I usually have 2 to 3 projects on the go at a time. So I had just gotten this started, and that was kind of my purse knitting, like I said, take to work for lunch breaks, that kind of thing. But then I had another project that I was going to get started on. As a gift, I wanted to do a hat. This is called the Harrison hat. And it's a free pattern through Knitty. And I looked at it. It was for a gift. I specifically wanted this pattern. And I didn't have the yarn, and I really didn't want to take the time to wait because I needed a fast. It's going to go in the mail tomorrow for a birthday gift. So I was going to actually dye up the yarn. I had a lot of white undyed. I have dyes. I can dye my own yarn. And then I happened to be at a New Year's Day knitting party. We call it Knit Year's Day, and there's several of us that get together and spend the morning knitting. And when I was there, I was talking about needing to get yarn, or I actually had the yarn in water soaking while I was down there, and I was going to work on dyeing it that night so I could get started. And my friend Tammy said, I think I can help you out. So she went into her stash and said, which color gray and which color black and what weight do you want? And next thing I knew, she had 3 perfect skeins of Cascade 220 Superwash pulled out and said, here you go, get knitting. She even offered to let me have the needles and get started right there and then. So I had to do a little bit of figuring, and I said, I think I'm going to work on it when I get home because I need to print out the chart. And she said, well, what do you need? And we got to talking, and the gauge was just a little bit different on this. I wasn't sure that I could come close. I was working worsted weight yarn with a size 3 was the recommended. And I knew I wouldn't be able to do worsted weight on a US size 3. So we got to figuring. She's a math whiz. She did all the math for me, sent me home with the chart and my cast on number. We had it all figured out, and I started it that night. Well, I have never done 3-color color work before. So don't look too close because there's a lot of issues here, but I think it will work. But the first time I did it, yes, there's been more than one attempt at this hat. First time I did it, I couldn't get it on my head. It was very tiny. I was obviously nervous, and oh my goodness, I pulled that gauge in so tight using, I believe I started with a US size 5 for the ribbing, and then that was kind of tight, so I went to a size 6 and started on that, but my gauge was just a little bit small, so I went up to a US 7 for the color work. Well, somehow or other, I pulled that in so tight. It wasn't going to be comfortable to wear. You ever had a headband on that was too tight, and by an hour, half hour to an hour, you've just got a blazing headache? Well, that's kind of the way this felt when I tried to wear it myself. So I got it on part way, and it was like, oh no, this is not going to work. So then it was the issue of, and my color work was sloppy. This isn't great, but the first attempt was even sloppier. I have done, not a lot, but I've done a respectable amount of two-color color work. And I'm not fantastic at it. I'm hoping that's one of my goals this year, is to do some more color work. But I had no idea how much it changes things to go from two-color color work to three-color color work. And so most of this section here, let's see, this section. So all but about 4 rows of this graph, you're holding all 3 colors at the same time. So I just wasn't happy with how it turned out. So I went ahead and held my breath, closed my eyes, and yanked. And took out, I went all the way down. Oh, and the other thing was, it was getting too tall. I had this pattern, if you look it up on Ravelry, is actually kind of a ski hat with ear flaps. Really cute, but the person this is going to is definitely more of a beanie wearer. So I had tried to compensate by doing about an inch of the plain knitting before I started the graph. And it was definitely going to be too tall and more slouchy than beanie. So I went ahead, I knew that was wrong, ripped it out, and chalked it up to practice. I didn't realize that I could knit with my shoulders that close to my ears. I found myself just like this, working on this. So relaxed a little bit on the next try. I actually went back and added, this is a 16 row repeat, so I added one more repeat into the pattern. And then it was, because I'm not an experienced color work person, then it was the, do I go up a needle size? I didn't want to do that because it was already getting a little bit, the stitches just weren't staying consistent. So I liked the gauge I had been getting at a smaller, so I didn't know whether to go, there were options, up needle size, add more stitches to it, go down a needle size and add additional, just which option did I want? So what I decided was to add one repeat, stay with the same needle size, and just try to chill out and relax while I knit it. So I got started, cast on, or picked up my stitches, did a row or 2 this time instead of an inch of just the solid color, switched to my first color, and completely forgot until I got up to here that I needed to go up a needle size. At which point I was getting a little bit tired of guitars. I didn't think there was any way I could stand doing a 3rd repeat. Well, this, as I said, was Cascade Superwash. So I popped the thing on my head, went ahead and finished, put it on a long cable, popped it on my head, and thought, this is still going to give me a headache. But I liked the way the color worked, this stitch gauge, how this worked, or how it looked. So I really didn't want to go up another needle size. So essentially, I did the bottom, the ribbing on a size 5, and then I did the color work on a size 6. So I thought, well, before I rip this whole thing out, I'm going to go ahead and do the crown decreases, soak it, block it, see what happens, because it's superwash and that grows, right? So I put this, and of course I didn't swatch. So that may have But as you know from past episodes, if you've been with me before, me and swatching just doesn't necessarily accurately represent what will happen. And I knew that by the time I got I just knew gauging, I was going to be better off just calling this my gauge swatch. So I didn't know for sure how much this would grow. Popped it in the water, let it soak with some wool wash, and then put it on, and I knew I wanted to stretch it, so I actually put a like a bath towel over my little foam head friend and popped the hat on and tried to stretch it a little bit. Oh my goodness, when I got it on the form, the thing just swamped. It had grown massive. And at that point I'm going, do I need to put it in the dryer for a minute and see if it can if I can shrink it in a little bit? I have been all over the place with this hat. It's too big, it's too small. It's too big, it's too small. But I think in the long run, I can put it on, and it does fit me. I think I've measured it out, and I think it will fit the recipient. Not my best work. I have, if I ever do 3-color color work again, I did not do a fantastic job with my floats, catching them at least. I started out trying to catch every 4 to 5 down here. Then when I got into the 3 colors, I just lost my rhythm of trapping the floats. But honestly, it's a hat. It's not like you're gonna have fingers that catch. And because of the stark color contrast, no matter what I did, how loose I made them, I was just getting, and I know this is just experience and practice, but every time the hat stretched just a little bit, I was getting like the black coming through on the white, and I just didn't, so I just quit trying to trap them more than, I think I did about 8 stitches across. So more than I would normally have liked, but it doesn't look terribly bad if you're not a knitter. And it's gonna work just fine for a hat. So that's the Harrison hat. That is my journey into 3-color color work for now. I am very much looking forward to getting back to some 2-color color work projects in the future. I've got several in mind. Not sure exactly which one I'm gonna start off with. I'm kind of at that point where I've finished quite a few projects, and right now the only project that I have on needles is a pair of just plain old vanilla socks. This was some that I got in a D-stash. It is Regia. I think this has been discontinued, but there's what I'm using. And I actually started this, I think 2 days ago, and I started doing a pattern on the top of the foot. This will be just a plain vanilla sock at this point, because when I got that pattern started, I got about that much, and I had kind of just a knit purl combination that I was playing with. But when I got started, and then I flipped it over to do the plain knitting on the back, I really actually liked the way it looked just plain. This is a self-striping, kind of what they call, I think I've heard it called foil, with the little bands of color in it. And there's 3, I didn't realize it was actually 3 different colors with this little dot pattern in between. And somehow the pattern, the stitch pattern just wasn't showing off the colors. So I've had several sock projects where I do the patterning on the front, the top of the foot, and then I flip it over and do the plain stockinette on the back, and I actually like the way the yarn looks better in the plain stockinette. I never ever thought I would be just a plain vanilla sock knitter, but apparently I am. This is going to have a new to me heel pattern. I was in a Facebook sock knitting group, and we were talking about the different places that we tend to wear holes in our socks. And you know, a lot of people say they wear the toe, underneath the toe. Some people wear the back side of the heel, like depending on the type of shoe, and if you have this back part, like where you would have the heel flap, if you're doing a heel flap and gusset, that they have a lot of abrasion there. Mine tends to be right underneath the very tip of my heel. That's where I go through them. And I've often wondered, like in a heel flap and gusset, if you do an eye of partridge, you have a little bit of extra padding on that flap. So for example, on this one here, so a lot of people say they rub it out, rub their socks holes right here. Mine is right here. And this is almost like a double thickness. And then when you get to here, you're back down to plain stockinette. So I had started doing, and this may be stuff that y'all know by now, and I'm just learning. I had started doing if you can see it, a garter heel. And that was good. I have not worn out a garter heel that I've done, so it is definitely stronger. But somehow I just couldn't, I wanted to put that eye of partridge on the underside of the heel. And I've seen some patterns, but they were in books that are no longer in print for a padded heel. And anyway, we had this long discussion. It was quite fun in the sock knitting group. And one lady posted that she had kind of reverse engineered her technique of doing something like a slip stitch heel turn. And so several of us said, oh, we'd like that pattern, and she offered to send us her notes, basically. So all of that to say, I'm going to do a plain sock and try her little heel variation. Right at this point, I have not tried it. I haven't even read through it more than just to say, okay, here it is, and definitely going to try that on my next sock. She is planning, or thinking, I guess, maybe more than planning, to write up her notes, get it tested, and put it out as I think she said she was going to do a free pattern on Ravelry. So if that happens, I will definitely let her know my results, and I will let you know my results. And if that does come up as something helpful and she does put it in a pattern, I will definitely pass that information on at that time. But for right now, I am enjoying just a plain sock. But that is my only project on the needles right now. So I have like analysis paralysis, I suppose. I've got 8 patterns, a couple sweaters, a pair of slippers, a hat, some mittens, gloves. I've got all these printed out, stacked with the yarns, in some cases even the needles, and just can't quite decide which one I want to start on next. The other project that I am working on, I have 5 of these little nests made up with my alpaca angora blend fiber and silk. And that is all I have left of the 4 ounces. I am so close. This is about 3 grams, and I am spinning that up at one sitting. So it takes me 15 minutes to maybe 20 minutes or so, depending. And that's what I can do in about a comfortable time of spinning. What I found is if I take a larger project, break it down into small pieces like that, kind of get an idea for how much I can do in 15 to 20 minutes, then I can sit down at my wheel, spin this amount, and then walk away. If I have just the whole braid, then I tend to spin, and it's like knitting, one more row. You just want one more row. I'm going to get to one more color repeat or one more pattern repeat, and it's the next thing you know, you've been there for an hour and a half or more. And the problem with that is, much like your hands get a little tired from knitting, and you can end up with some stress injury. I do the same thing with my spinning. I don't want to stop. I just, well, a little bit more, and then I slide my hook on the bobbin, and I'll just fill this section up, and then I'll fill the next section up, and yeah, and then by the time I decide I really have to stop, like I can't stand up and I hurt the next day. So I've decided that for me, making up these little nests, for one thing, it makes the project seem like it goes a lot faster. I have a certain number of sessions that I'm going to be spinning, and that's helpful for me. So like for now, I know that I have five more spinning, 15 to 20 minutes, and I will have this project spun, at least the singles, and then it'll take me another day or two to get it all plied together. But theoretically, this project that I have been working on for 2.5 years now, not steady, off and on, but I finally got back to it, broke it down into measurable steps, and potentially by the end of next week I could be ready to knit with it. And that is just plain exciting. I can also tell you that just holding this in my hands like this for the last 2 minutes, my hands are hot. This stuff is going to be warm. So I'm spinning it. I hope it will stay at a lace weight. It should, if my calculations are correct. And it's definitely going to be something like a shawl. The other thing, if I have some left over, there's been a lot of people talking about colorwork mittens that they line. And this would be phenomenal lining for a pair of mittens. So we'll see. That's another option, another idea. So that's kind of my spinning. And then I've been talking about the 51 yarns project. And I have not been able to do that the last few weeks. They've just been categories that I didn't have fiber for, or I just didn't have time to do it. But I have actually been selected twice to receive the free subscription to Ply. So I thought it was high time. And there were several upcoming ones that I wasn't really sure what was intended. So I took a little bit of Christmas money and I bought the book 51 Yarns. This is put out by J.C. Boggs Faulkner of Ply Magazine, and every entry, trying to find, okay, so here's one I really want to do, and it's already been done, I believe, so I've missed this one, but every entry, sorry about the glare, is 2 pages. So it just has a little bit about, and most of this she's shared on Instagram, but most of it just has like a little description of what the yarn is. This isn't necessarily an instructional book, but there are some hints from other spinners on tips to succeed with that type of yarn. And then the fun part, down here at the bottom, she has, oh, it's gonna totally blow out. She has for the record. So it's like a little bit of a spinning journal also that you can put in what yarns you spun. You could pop, I hope to pop like a little sample in there, the date, just any notes that you want to make about your experience spinning that. So I have not yet done anything with this, but I'm kind of looking forward to the challenge. I know there are several other the Ply Magazine sponsored contest will come to an end, I believe, the middle of March. So we're almost there with the 51 Yarns challenge. And then there are several podcasts and several groups that are continuing this next year. I know Rachel from Welford Pearls is doing, she's got it broken down into 2 a month. So it's basically going to be a 2-year challenge. And every 2 weeks in her group, she's going to select a different yarn and do a lot of teaching, she does such great in-depth information on how-tos, tips for success with spinning. I don't know that I will take part in that officially, but I am definitely looking forward to some of her information and seeing how they do that. So this will just be kind of a long term, but I'm looking forward to digging into. There are several, like the tweed one that I showed you. There is a tweed category for the Missouri State Fair in hand spinning, and that's one I have never done before. So I'm hoping to kind of play with that over the next few months and maybe even be able to cross this off my 51 Yarns challenge, document that in my journal, and maybe even be able to do an entry into the fair this year. So that's kind of some of my spinning goals. I also was going to show you the cowl that I finished last episode that I was telling you I really liked the yarn and I loved how it fit. I had also shared that was from a sock blank from Victoria House, and I had cut off one repeat of the sock blank because I really liked the look of it. I liked the picture. And this was a gift from my friend Tammy, and I told her I would show a picture of this because I found a frame, if I can get it all in there, I found a frame that will hang perfectly in my little kitchen, and there is the repeat. So this is not professionally framed. You can tell from the back. What I had done is run a lifeline down the side of where I wanted to cut, much like if you were putting in an after heel sock, something like that, and then cut the yarn and made sure that I had one full repeat. And this poor little hen has lost a few of her tail feathers because there just wasn't a lot of room between the chickens. So there is my little sock blank picture. And I said I didn't do this very professionally because if I ever want to go ahead and pop this out and use that yarn, I totally can. So there's an idea. So many of us have these sock blanks. I've got several more that I do not want to cut into. I don't want to spoil the picture. They're just so pretty. And like I said, this will go perfectly in my kitchen. But here's one idea of what you can do with it. And you can definitely get a whole lot fancier with the framing. I just wanted it very simple. So there's one idea. And then, like I said, I can also pop this out and use it, or I can pop it out and make it into a pillow or something like that. So I haven't lost the sock blank at all. So there's one idea. So what am I wearing? I said I've done a little bit of color work, very much a novice. This is the Rusty cardigan, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the actual name of it. The nickname for it, translation, is Rusty. It's an older pattern on Ravelry. It is free. The pattern is something of a recipe and a chart. A couple years ago, I want to say 2016 or probably 2016, the Woolly Thistle had a knit along with it. It is knit out of Plutalope. So this sweater, I decided to join in with the knit along because I had never used Plutalope. I had never done a yoked sweater. I had never done a garment with color work. I'd never steeped. I'd never done a buttonhole. There were a lot of firsts in this sweater. So given that there were a lot of firsts in this sweater, I was very pleased with how it turned out. The color work is not perfect. My steek is not perfect. I did go ahead and take my best crack at doing a steek and doing a ribbon there and doing the buttons with the little backer buttons on there. Totally put the buttons on way too tight. So, and followed the directions on I think I got the buttons a little bit small. There weren't any instructions. So I do have some issues with the buttons staying closed, but that's okay. And overall, the sweater is just a wee bit on the big side. It is so cozy. And if you haven't used Plutalope, it's actually an unspun Icelandic yarn. It comes in a round wheel, and I wish I had more to show you. This is on my list of things to knit with again, for sure. I really enjoyed it. But I did actually destash the leftovers of this color. For one thing, it is very affordable. It's very light. But being unspun, I think it's more mentally challenging than actually challenging. It's not spun, but Icelandic is a very long fiber. So even though it's unspun, and if you've ever seen just even a commercial roving type yarn, you know that you can just pull it apart. There's nothing in the yarn skein, just in a single strand. There's nothing holding it together. So you can drift it apart. I found that it wasn't, once I got over the fear of it breaking, I didn't have too much trouble. I think I had it break twice the whole time that I was knitting this sweater. And one time it was because I was knitting in a rocking chair and I didn't realize that the yarn had gone under the rocker. I couldn't exactly blame the yarn on that one. But the other thing, because it's 100% wool, you can spit splice it pretty easily. So it's not really any problem to put it back together. I enjoyed it so much. And when I first felt the yarn, Icelandic is not merino by any stretch. It can kind of feel coarse. But when it's all knit together, for one thing, you wouldn't know it's not spun because it holds together just fine in the knitting. It's a very durable fabric. It weighs next to nothing. I think the plates are 4 ounces, and I used 1 and a piece, like a very small piece. I had most of the plate left from the second one. So it really, it goes a long way. It blooms up beautifully. And when I have it on, I'm not the most sensitive, but I don't tend to like a real scratchy wool right on my skin. And I had intended I would be wearing this with a long sleeve shirt underneath. It was definitely going to be a layering piece, so I wasn't at all concerned. But I haven't, even when I've worn it with short sleeve, it has not been scratchy, rough on my skin. I have not minded it at all. So I definitely want to, and I've seen people doing shawls with it recently, and I can't imagine. I wore this to church this morning, and I am, as I've often said, very cold-natured. I was about burning up in it. So it is very, very warm, and yet it's not heavy at all. So I really like this. I am hoping to do more. I've seen several other colorwork patterns that I think would be so pretty in this. I have ideas for a couple shawls as well. I think that would be beautiful. I am tempted, and if any of you have experience with this and can let me know, I would love to know your experience. Because it is just a little bit big, I've been tempted to throw it in some hot water. I've been told that Icelandic doesn't, it will felt, but it's not a fast to felt like a merino. So I've been tempted to kind of throw it in some hot water, swish it around, and see if I could maybe just shrink it just a little bit, so it would be a little bit more wearable, which would also help potentially with my buttons staying in and stuff like that. So it's okay the way it is. I would enjoy it just a little bit more if it were a little bit smaller. And part of that, I have a little bit smaller frame and narrower shoulders, and so sometimes these yoke sweaters just don't fit me phenomenally. But I'm gonna lick it because I have a couple more yoke sweaters in my queue that I really want to do this year. One of which I am definitely thinking about getting some Lopi for, or not Lopi, sorry, some Plutolope, and trying it again. I really, really enjoyed it, and there's so many colors. They're beautiful, and like I said, it is for 100% wool. It is a very affordable yarn as well. And there's several places you can get it. I know Woolly Thistle has it. She was out of the color that I wanted at the time, so I actually did get it another place. But if you are interested in this sweater or anything like it, I believe that thread on the Woolly Thistle Ravelry group is still there, and it's just called the Rusty Cardigan. If I can find it quickly, I'll try to link to that discussion. Lots and lots and lots of wonderful comments and tips, ideas, a lot of helpful information on knitting with the Plutolope, knitting this sweater in specific, a lot of help on steeking. It was a wonderful place to do a knit along for so many new techniques for me. So if those are any techniques that are new to you, I would totally encourage you to give them a try. Maybe I know there's a lot of alongs this year in the fiber community for trying something new. And if you've never steeked, if you've never tried an unspun yarn like this, if color work is new to you, give them a try. You don't have to do all of them new all at once in one project like I did with this. That was a little overwhelming. But if there's so many alongs, like I said, and I think on Ravelry you can even search for make-alongs or knit-alongs. So if there's something new to you, look it up and see if maybe there is a knit-along going on. And a lot of times those people in those groups are very, very helpful. in helping. I know I found out for this, that was a wonder. I very likely would not have completed the whole project if I hadn't been part of a group that could say, you know, I could put in a message that morning, okay, I'm done with the knitting and I've got to speak tonight, and a little bit nervous about this. And then have 3 or 4 people comment back, you can do it, show us the results, and being able to put that on there. It's just very, if you have a knit group, or a local knitting shop that you can pop into for help, I would definitely encourage you to try. I'm not going to be running any of those myself, because there's so many great groups out there doing this. But new year, give a new skill a try. It doesn't have to be anything big, but just try one new thing. Another thing I've been doing this week, I started to work on restoring one of my vintage Singer treadle sewing machines. So I started with the Singer 9W. This is a machine from, it's right here and I'm looking at it. I don't know the exact date. They weren't very well recorded. I have the serial number, but there's only very spotty records from what I have learned from this particular model. So somewhere just after the turn of the century, most likely 1906-ish, 1912 is kind of dates I've run across. So it's in good shape. It needs some restoration work, but I basically wanted to see if it would even run before I started working on polishing and all that kind of stuff. So it's in good enough shape to run. I did learn how to put a new treadle belt on it, and need to do some adjusting on it yet. First try wasn't perfect, but I got it all oiled, and oh my goodness, it took up the oil. It had obviously been sitting for a very long time. So I just kept squeezing the oil in it, running it, and trying to get everything going. And every drop of oil I put in, you could just almost hear that sigh. And you'd put in a drop or 2 of oil and then turn the wheel just to get the gears going and get the oil distributed. And go on to the next part and drop in a couple more, one more drop of oil, and then turn the hand crank, or not hand crank, but the flywheel. And every time I did that, you could it turned a little bit easier, and it was a little quieter, and it was just very exciting. And then I had to figure out how to thread the thing, how to wind a bobbin on it. It wasn't hard at all, but all I had to go on later, I found the YouTube videos on how to do all this. But at the time I had searched for a video and couldn't find anything, so I had what was probably a mimeographed and scanned copy of the original manual. The directions were good, but definitely written at the turn of the century, and I wasn't really sure. It didn't have any diagram of the whole machine with the parts. So it would say, go behind this part and in front of this part and then through this screw and all of this. And I basically ended up sort of winging it. I looked at the diagram and then just thought, okay, this is a sewing machine. And other than a lot of bells and whistles, sewing machines haven't essentially changed a lot. So between this 1900 something to my 1950 featherweight to my bare bones simple sewing machine that I have, that just off the big box store, the essential parts are the same. So I was able to get it, finally, after a few tries, get it all threaded up, and had to play a lot with the tension. I still have a little bit of tweaking to do, but she sews. I actually got it sewing, and a usable seam. Not perfect, but completely usable. So I'm very excited, and I took a little bit of video working on that, and I will include that probably at the end, just a couple minutes of kind of a tour of that machine and how it's working. So I am hoping to get it. I have 1 needle and 1 bobbin only. And the needles for this machine are no longer in existence. There is a similar needle that I have been told will work. I actually have to get some of those ordered. So right now I am working with the antique original needle, which is a little scary. It's got a little bit of rust on the shank, but The needle itself, the point is still good. So I will be getting some new needles and probably framing that first one. And I only have one bobbin, so it means I have to take the thread off and rethread it if I want to change colors. So I have a little bit of quilting that's very simple. Not quilting, but the piecing at the top of the quilt. That's just very straight lines, and I think I'm going to go ahead and try to do it on that machine this week. So very much looking forward to that. If I can get this one all done, then I have a little bit more repair work to do on my 1894 Singer 27. That one is going to take a little bit more overhaul. So if I can get this one under my belt, then maybe I'll get the nerve up to, and I didn't take everything apart the way I could have and way I want to. I also spent some time this week. I ripped apart my featherweight a little bit and got it all oiled and cleaned and ready to do some more sewing. That thing is a workhorse. I love sewing on it, and I can tell that I am gonna really enjoy this treadle machine as well. The fun part is, being a spinner, I'm totally used to the treadling, and I wasn't sure. Every video, everybody I've talked to has said, you know, spend some time without the needle in it, just getting the rhythm of the treadle and working that. I didn't find it hard at all. And I think it's largely due to the fact that I'm used to working with a spinning wheel, and I'm used to my feet moving in coordination with my hands. I'm used to just the gradual motion of the treadle and being able to stop the needle at the place that I want it to be. It was so much fun, beyond what I even anticipated. So really, really enjoying that journey. I've got a long ways to go. If I can get, now that I know that it actually works, I'm a little bit more likely to start really unscrewing things and cleaning the inside a little bit more. They're just fun to see how they work. These machines were meant to be worked on at home. They were meant to last a lifetime, to be repaired. They were meant for the average person to be able to do the maintenance. So I'm really looking forward to getting under the hood of this machine a little bit more than I already have. And then maybe getting into the other machine as well. There will be more to come on that, I am sure. So if you're interested in that, I know several of you have messaged me or made comments about my antique machines. I just know that they are in progress. I am actively working on them after several months of owning them. I'm really glad to be able to put them into use. So I'll have more of that. Like I said, I did do, I think, 2 or 3 minutes worth of video as I was working on it and sewing with it the first time. I'll pop that in at the end. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much for spending time with me, and I hope that your gathering basket gathers nothing but blessings until I see you again. Bye for now.